Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of UL. I am Al Ernst. This is our co-host, Pastor Jeff Gross of New Life Lutheran Church. How are you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing well, thank you very much.
Everything good?
Can't complain. That's just code for doing great, but I don't want to jinx it.
Yeah, all right. Well, and that comes, it's an interesting thought coming from a pastor.
I know.
Still in this day. Yeah, but
You
let's
still
see
got
that,
just a little bit of superstition, just a tiny little bit.
I plead that one totally. You know, when there's
Sure.
good momentum, you want to keep the good momentum going, and you believe, okay, I better not say this, or I'm gonna break that momentum. Well, why don't we start our momentum off right with a prayer?
Thank you, Al. Great God, I'm so grateful to be here today on this beautiful day that you have made, and we're so grateful to be able to come to all of our friends who are watching and be able to share some of our life experiences and observations, as well as some thoughtful reaction in response to what you have to say. And we ask that you may bless this time you've given us together in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Well, before we get into my very eventful time, tell me what's going on with the church, how the week went, what we may have coming up, and that very quickly, so that we're all kind of on the same page.
Well, we're coming off of Easter and moving into the time when our friends are starting to head north. But the summer is a great time for planning. The summer is a great time for strategy. And so, if we're doing our job right, we're just as busy in the summer as we are Advent and Lent. And that's what we're anticipating. And also, here we are in our new studio, and we're looking at ways to improve the way we get the word out to people. We're looking at ways of improving our social media and ways in which we're improving our website. And all of these kind of things are all to make it so you can hear the gospel better. So that's really what we're all about. We're not into it for the sake of gadgets and gizmos and gadgets and all of those kind of things. We're here for the sake of the gospel.
Which I think number one, it's a great statement, but I also think we need to talk about the fact that both you and I, you being younger than me, although we're all kind of in that over 50, and now I can say I'm in that over 60 age group. But much of the technology and the communication that is available to us, we just want to avoid, because we want to claim ignorance and call ourselves dinosaurs and everything like that. But what we have to understand is that as all of these things move forward, we should have technology be useful for us, not technology using us. And the reason I say all that is because there is a curve that we have to learn, and we have to force ourselves to say, okay, this is very uncomfortable. Just like I know how it is in the entertainment world, some of these things are very uncomfortable for me to try to get on my laptop and figure out, but I have to do it. I have to figure that out. But I also do not want that little gizmo we talk about, our gadgets and gizmos. I do not want to be serving my phone. I want my phone to be serving me.
Yep.
And I think so much nowadays we're way too reverse mode. Everybody just lets their phone. Their phone is what is the primary source of what everything they do, how they do it, and we're attached to that as opposed to using it in a way that benefits us moving forward.
Yeah, and I never thought in a million years we'd get to this point. Starting out when you paid money when I got my first cell phone, You paid money when you answered your phone.
Right. Oh yeah.
And you paid a lot of money when you dialed, and phones were for emergencies, and now they've become a favorite toy among children. But you know what I think about? I was thinking about technology and modern technology from a historical perspective. This is not our first rodeo. When we went from horses to cars, there are a lot of angry horse drivers.
Right.
And while we talk about contemporary music in church, there was a day when Old Rugged Cross was a newfangled hymn, and somebody thought it was one of those hymns the kids are singing and made a big fuss about it. So we're not strangers to adapting to change.
I agree.
So it's put ourselves in the same mode,
right,
and that will help us out a little bit.
But for what we want to have technology serve the gospel, and that is that those of you that are either live too far away or are not able to come to church for whatever reason that is, we want to make as many resources available to you via this technology that we possibly can. But we also do not want this to replace that person-to-person interaction, because that's what really, when it comes down to it, that so many people. I just read an article this morning that now we've kind of moved through the COVID situation, that the biggest mental health issue that people are dealing with is loneliness.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. People, even though people are more connected, and I heard a social scientist say the other day on one of the TV shows, people are more connected than ever, technology, but more disconnected than they've ever been interpersonally. And it's a strange dichotomy to think that we can get our information and we can get a hold of people so much easier, but people are lonely. People are really lonely, and we're trying to help that.
Well, and I want to help that by giving you all the opportunity to be with us. Obviously, the more numbers we get watching the show and everything, the better. I guess you could say perks we get from our providers, YouTube and Facebook and all that kind of stuff. But what we really want to give you is quality. Yeah. We want to, there is a reason why, we come in and Jeff and Brian get here earlier, and they record their shows, and we record this show together week in and week out, is because we want to offer that connection, that time. So feel free at any point, whether it's through the technology or in person, or what amazes me the most is that we call these gadgets phones, and my question is, how often do we actually talk on them?
Yeah, isn't that funny?
Yeah, I mean, the phone was supposed to be the phone where you actually talked on the phone, and now, the old joke is that people would be speaking in private places, and I don't mean to sound silly on this, but whether it was the bathroom or something like that, and you think people were talking to themselves, and they're actually showering and doing their things while they're talking on the phone in their bathroom. And now that is even eliminated, because all you're doing is you're texting, or while you're in the bathroom, or you're doing something else. So please understand, we're going to continue to improve this technology the best we can. But as I have learned, is at 61 years old, and had a great one of those. What is the Asian terminology for an epiphany? It's a satori.
I didn't know that, but now I do.
Yeah. Well,
I love that.
A satori in that realm means going through a gate, walking through a gate into something new. And when I do know that
it was worth it just to wake up this morning so I could learn that.
Well, that comes from
Yeah.
an old dude who also follows New Japan Pro Wrestling because
Okay.
yeah,
The-
when they will use terminology over there, I have to go look it up and see what it means and the
if you,
story
just in case you haven't picked it up, Al likes wrestling.
yeah.
Just
Well,
in case you haven't picked it up.
I love story. Yeah, I love the story. I love the stories of it.
Hey, I'm not going to argue. I'll tell you that it's a good. If you're learning, man,
Yep,
that's wonderful.
And so I must admit I had a grand satori over this past weekend on Saturday night. I used to say that after 30, now going on 34 years of full time stand up comedy, I could probably give you the list, the top 10 list of odd places where I've been hired to do a show, and now I never thought I'd get a new number one. And this past Saturday night, I got a new number one. And in addition to that, I learned a whole lot about myself and others. To do that much of a tease without now, see, we aren't even going to a commercial break, but you do that much of a tease. I was booked by a friend of mine who is a comedian who happens to be of the Muslim faith to go and do a show with him that up in Tampa that celebrated the end of Ramadan. Now I know you also attended an event too, right?
Yeah, I had a friend who invited me to an event where it was a breaking of the fast of Ramadan.
Right. And so this is obviously in the Muslim faith is a big deal. It's a celebration. It's a big time. And my friend said, "Oh, don't Al, please don't worry about it." And he kind of gave me the guardrails as a comedian of which I would have to know, because not that I would ever intentionally want to offend somebody on a joke. You just just like in the Christian religion, or if I'm doing a Jewish event or something like that, there are certain sacred things that you wouldn't say as even in a joking manner. So I had all of that, but I knew I was in for an unusual situation. Two things I learned: number one, the mosque itself that they worship in, they don't do anything else in that but worship. That, unlike our sanctuary, of which we turn that into tables for a pancake breakfast or a meeting or anything else, the only thing that a mosque is built for is to worship. That's it.
Right.
They have an addendum building of which they call a cultural education center, of which that's where all of their social events and things of that nature take place. So I found my way to this event. I came in, I walked in, and if you want to know what it feels like to be a complete fish out of water, and some of us always wonder what folks that are in other of other races and other faiths. No, I understand when there's an entirely group of us that are all Caucasian together. I was pretty much the only Caucasian Christian in this entire building of about 100 people. And not only that, they were all dressed in traditional garb, which is the long coats. It looked wonderful, stylish. I mean, it looked really cool. But the women also wore the I wanted hijabs, and all those kind of things. And man, were they having a good time? They were having an absolute blast. When it came time for the program, my friend went up and opened the show, and the imam handed him the microphone, and he did his little time. I think the folks applauded and laugh politely. I'm not sure that kind of group understands how to really get loose and have fun with
Right.
comedy, because I think they are waiting for that moment where somebody's going to say something that's going to offend them. And then he introduces me, and I begin, and again, everything is going very well, but then all of a sudden, in mid-syllable of a line and a joke I'm setting up, I mean, mid-syllable, a horn blows, and the next thing you know, the imam is standing next to me and taking the mic out of my hand, and it is time for prayer. And when it is time for prayer, it is just time for prayer.
I'm guessing we're not talking this.
No, we're not. We are talking, take your shoes off, go grab your rugs, and head to the area that is pointing east of the Cultural Education Center. And there you go. And I am just standing there, just amazed at what is going on. I don't, nobody has told me I've done something wrong. It's just that
Right.
that is what they begin to do. And I observe this very disciplined prayer ritual that they go through, which I have to say I greatly admire. I think if we as Christians had the faith of the discipline of the faith that
Pray 5 times a day.
right?
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty impressive thing. And they go through it. My other observation is that there were men that were much older, and I would say not in great physical condition, that I was absolutely amazed that they could get down on their knees and put their foreheads to the floor.
Right.
And maintain that position for
right.
a time. That was just, I mean, and then turn around and not only just go to their knees, but then stand back up and then go back to their knees and then go to the floor and then stand back up. I mean, it was just absolutely amazing. And then it was over. A bell rang. It was over. And the imam came up to me and I said words I'll never forget. He says, you may now continue with your humorous story. and that was it. I mean, and
that's adorable,
right? You may now continue with your humorous story. And so I try to get to people's attention, but the imam gave me the stuff, and this is now they're putting everything away. So quite honestly, without being offensive, I feel like I'm doing comedy in the warehouse of a Pier 1 Imports. I mean,
sure.
There's everybody carrying rugs. They're rolled up. They're getting things done, everything like that. And I finished my show, and what I come to find out is that all of the things that since 9/11, especially, that we as a group in America have kind of labeled
right.
Our Muslim friends to be, could not be further from who the greater population of these people are. They're just there. I mean, just as we were talking a little bit and not wanting to go too in depth of this, but we have folks that consider themselves Christians, that call themselves Christians, that we would for all intents and purposes, call them as much of the evildoers and terrorists.
Even,
that Muslim extremist did to the United States on 9/11.
They're definite. That's definitely true, Alan. And those of us who are not of that ilk see this kind of tribalism and this kind of behavior that is not defined by Jesus Christ or Muhammad or any prophets who ever existed of any faith. It's something that comes out of ignorance. It comes out of hatred. It comes out of all kinds of bad things. And what you experienced was more the rule than the exception.
Right.
And when people come to New Life Lutheran Church, they're experience the rule, not the exception. They're going to experience love and all kinds of things that aren't necessarily portrayed about us, even by our own media. But I'm glad you had that experience.
I learned so much, and also would tell you that from an entertainer standpoint, it really taught me about upgrading my own thought pattern and material about being funny, because it's easy to make jokes about, from the 9/11 stuff, about somebody who doesn't look like you possibly being a terrorist that's on an airplane, or I mean, those things are just like these easy, and I will, without going crazy on this, I call them cheap. It's cheap.
Yeah.
It's cheap humor, because it's the common denominator thing to go to, instead of really being creative and trying to think of what you want to say in a new way, in a new version. What we resort to is to this, this group mentality of cheap behavior, and now I don't think I can ever go back to that idea, again. After, I mean, not only were they wonderful during my show, but even after my show, I mean, they, of course, they, no problem with getting, this was a paid show, wasn't a volunteer show. They paid me. They offered me their dinner that evening, which I find some of their customs being very interesting. There was no, I did not feel like women were in second place at all in that faith. But maybe you can answer this a little bit better than I can. But the buffet lines, there was a buffet line for men and a buffet line for women.
Interesting.
You weren't, there was no, that those were the, now, could they sit at the same tables and eat and all those other, yes. But many of the things that were done, and even in the prayer, I noticed that the men were in one group and the women were in a completely different. So this isn't even somebody that maybe you're married to or have a relationship with. Whereas, I would be saying I would be praying with my spouse, or someone of the opposite sex, or would be standing in our sanctuary during prayers, standing next to a woman. That does not happen in a Muslim, and they don't seem, it doesn't, but it also doesn't seem to be what's the word I'm looking for, Jeff? It doesn't seem to be a negative.
They're not bothered by that at all.
Right. They don't see that as an unequal kind of thing. Now, I realize there are sects of Muslim faith where, that's, the women are so in second place that they can't even drive, and they can't even go places.
Kind of hard to know where religion begins and culture ends sometimes, because you've got a cultural components that affect, and we manifest itself. I mean, there are some Christian faiths where men sit on one side and women sit on the other. Yeah, there's very much that kind of separation. In that, you could say, well, is that Dutch, or is that Pennsylvania Dutch culture, or is that, doctrine? And say, well, I'm thinking it's probably a cultural component. It's kind of hard to know sometimes, but I think when you open yourself up, first of all, if you find yourself invited by your neighbor, and I grew up in a neighborhood where everybody pretty much looked like me. And went to church. The question was not if you were a Christian, but what church you went to. And now my neighborhood looks a lot different. It's even where I'm at, which is not known for its diversity. Love your neighbor as yourself. That's what Jesus said. And you can actually learn more about your own Christianity. You probably came out of this experience knowing more about Christianity than Islam.
Well, I did. I think I learned about both, but I think I learned as much about my own faith
Yes,
in
exactly.
in the sense that I really, really, really admired their proclamation of their faith, but not in a way that interrupts other people's daily lives. But to me, it was about their discipline, about doing those things. Now, we all say we want to do a morning Bible study. We all say we want to make sure that we have a prayer life. We all say all those kind of things. The difference being, and I'm sure a lot of Christians do that, but I also am quite positive that a lot of people say that, and for whatever reason, we wake up in the morning and instead of going to do that, kind of like going to exercise, we find every reason that we got to, we got to get the dog out and we got to get the coffee made and we got to do this, and we don't take that time. And it seems to me that people of that faith take the time to live that faith.
And if you visit a Christian monastery or a Catholic monastery or an Orthodox Jewish synagogue or an Islamic mosque, you come out of that experience saying, discipline's not a bad thing.
Right.
Discipline is something, when you ask somebody, would say, when do Christians give thanks? Well, the fourth Thursday of November. We set our calendar. They set their watches. And so if we gave thanks to God 5 times a day or 4 times a day or 7 times a day, depending on what your tradition is, wow, that's a whole lot of gratitude to be, and we should take that a lot more seriously. And there's a lot to be said for that.
Right. I couldn't agree with you more. And what I would challenge our folks out there is to begin looking at ways that, it's not that, that Satori for me, that epiphany for me overnight turned around and I became, a 5 times a day, stop and do my prayers. But what it really did make me aware of is what my real daily habits were versus what I claim to say is my faith.
Right.
And that was one of the biggest learnings I ever had. And I also learned at how good it feels from a person's standpoint who was a total fish out of water to be welcomed and to have the graciousness of a group of people who could have just as well, just very easily have sat me in the corner and said, okay, you're done, go away. Now we'll leave you with this with a little bit more of a humorous story. They invited me to stay to eat, and of course the let's just say the cultural culinary diet of that area is not quite what the American cultural.
It wasn't like going to Golden Corral.
No, it wasn't, and nor did I want to be offensive, but it smelled. The smell was magnificent.
Right.
Made me ravenously hungry. But when they took that foil off, and this was, like I said, I was in the men's line. Luckily, I was with my friend, and I looked down. Now, number one, I find this in that culture, deboning and fillet is not in their mind. If you are having, whether it's chicken or lamb or goat or any of those things, folks, they don't, there's no discarding. They don't waste. There's no waste. Everything is in it. And what I will say is probably to them, it looked like it should be picture perfect in a cookbook. And I'm just saying, it looked to me like somebody went to a nuclear toxic waste area and took a giant scoop out of that and put it into a tray. Because I mean, the creams, there was a cream. They said, "Oh, this is you can probably do this. This is just cream spinach," and it was quite the different thing. But they go, "Oh, because we've added the goat into it," and that wouldn't stop me.
Nope.
Right off the bat, right there. And I said, "Well, I can eat rice." So I got myself a big scoop of rice, and they had little seeds in the rice. And little did I know, those seeds in the rice, as I first enjoyed the rice, turned my mouth into Puff the Magic Dragon. And I'm just like what? And they go, and then they go on to tell me that. Oh, well, these are seeds. These are the only kind of grasses that grow in the desert, and so these are seeds that we eat these seeds. And I said, and they grow in the grass. Oh yeah, we use them on our lawn. And my initial reaction was, I'm eating grass seed. And then I thought to myself, you know what? What was one of the great snacks of the day now? Sunflower seeds. So how am I to judge that, I chew on sunflower seeds, which is that much different from they're chewing on.
That's how you got to look at it.
So
there's probably somebody out there who's thinking, I'll eat sunflower seeds. What a weirdo.
Yeah.
You just never know.
Right.
You just never know.
So with that, I will tell you that we dominated the time here today, but it was now my number one most unique place. It is taking the place of the Publix deli that I used to say was my most unique place, or the top the top of the fish tank at the Bass Pro Shop where I did comedy one time. But I've done all those, folks.
You got to write a book.
Now this one takes the cake, not because it was Muslim, and but when the horn rings, everything stops. I don't care what's going on, and you pray, and then you may continue on with your humorous story. So
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that.
I did too. So with that being said, any other closing comments you got for us? I know I kind of
no. I mean, I'm learning, and I got a word for the day, Satori. Don't be surprised if I use that 5 times to the end of sentences just to get used to it.
Well, I have my new education in terms of, number one, don't judge one incident, one group of people as being the marketplace for everybody.
Right.
That's one thing for sure. And I think that the second thing that I got out of it is, look, folks, they live their faith.
Yeah.
All right? They live their faith. My question isn't telling you that you don't live your faith. My question is asking you, how can we further increase living our faith?
Wonderful question. Wonderful question.
So with that, we will wrap up another edition of UL and tell you we will see you next week. And in the meantime, you are watching UL. We were watching UL.
You can.
All right.